The 23-24 football season is now over, of course, outside of the Euros, and with this year came plenty of great performances, from players that we might have expected to do well, to players that have massively improved their game, and therefore, I think, are underrated in Football Manager. So I'm going to pick 10 of my favourites that I think will need a boost in the next game, and I think a lot of you might agree, but I want to hear your comments down below. Who do you think needs improving in Football Manager? But with that being said, let's check out my first pick. And the first player that I think is underrated in-game is Cole Palmer. Now, this will come from a bit of bias. I'm a Chelsea fan, and it must be said, the 10 players that I picked today are all my own opinions, so they're probably going to be players I've watched, and therefore a lot of Premier League talents, and, you know, not someone from the Brazilian division, so that's why I want to hear your guys' thoughts. But Palmer, for me, despite an upgrade in the winter update, is still underrated in Football Manager. I think his dribbling needs an improvement, I think his passing needs an improvement, and whilst there might be a concern that he could maybe have been a one-season wonder, I mean, I don't think so. The guy's still very young. The first opportunities he got at Man City, he did well. Then he came to Chelsea and he's took the league by storm. He wasn't just a good player, he was arguably one of the best. But in Football Manager, because of some of these attributes and his general current ability rating, he does not do well at all, and that is usually because Chelsea obviously have quite a lot of talent in their team, even if they haven't really performed like it in recent times. But Cole Palmer is rated so low that in his position that you'd argue would be his best off the right, Nicholas Jackson, Nkunku and Sterling, the game will favour to play more than him, and it's the same in pretty much every other area. He's not really expected to do well in any position in terms of the squad ranking, so he's not going to get many minutes, he won't develop, and often, if you simulate ahead in Football Manager a few years and check out where Palmer is, he'll be on the transfer list, he'll have been loaned out by Chelsea, and he just won't get any minutes at all. So I think come next year, we should see a big improvement in Palmer's game. And I think we'll also see a pretty big upgrade for Riccardo Calafiori, someone that's considered by many to be one of the standouts in this tournament so far. He's only played a couple of games for Italy, but he's looked pretty good in all of them. This is recorded before the third match, so if he scores an own goal from the halfway line, then, you know, I can't do anything about it. But he is a very recent inclusion in the Italy squad. He's had a great year out at Bologna, who performed massively well under Tiago, and it looks like he is now going to get a move away from Bologna pretty much straight away, whether that's to Juventus. I've seen him linked, I know Chelsea have been linked as well, very tedious links mind you, but it looks like he is someone that a lot of clubs are interested in, and it's no surprise, age 21, he was a Football Manager Wonderkid back in the day, and I'm sure he still has great potential, but he did kind of fall off the radar a little bit, but he's found his feet now, he's playing well for Bologna, and whilst he is a pretty good centre-back / left-back option in-game, I don't think he's anywhere near considered good enough in the game to be, say, a top 6 level defender for a Premier League side or something like that, so I think he needs an improvement so that he is one of the more sought-after defenders in world football, because he is in real life, and I expect he will get that upgrade come next year. Another player that I think is underrated is Dominic Solanke, Bournemouth striker who has been doing pretty well for a number of years, but this season, I don't know if it statistically is his best season, but it seems like he's getting more praise than ever in this Bournemouth side this season under Iriola, and it's no surprise, the guy's scoring plenty of goals, he is clearly a natural goal scorer, but in Football Manager, maybe it's because his technicals are so weak outside of a couple. He'll obviously score the odd goal here and there for you in Football Manager, but he doesn't score anywhere near as many as he does in real life. Maybe his attributes don't suit the engine, but he's not rated very highly at all. You'll never really likely see him going on to, say, one of the top 6 sides in the Premier League and doing well. I'm not saying that's where his career will go in real life, but you could kind of imagine him playing for a Chelsea, a Spurs. Obviously he was at Chelsea years and years ago now, but you could imagine him playing for one of those big 6 clubs, maybe not the elite ones, but in game that will just never happen with the attributes he's got. So I don't think he needs a huge improvement, but I'd like to see some extra elements added to his game in next year's edition of Football Manager. And I'd also expect to see an upgrade for Stanisic, who had a great season at Leverkusen. Was he one of their standout performers? You know, your Frimpongs, your Grimaldos, maybe not, but he did do quite well for them. Probably wouldn't have expected to play as many minutes as he did, or be as influential as he was, considering he was only a loanee from Bayern, but he's now gone from what I imagine Bayern considered to be a loanee talent that they might sell on, to actually coming back into Bayern's team for the coming season, and I expect them to use him quite heavily, because he was very good for Bayer Leverkusen. Now, I'm not going to sit here here and say that I watched Leverkusen's every game. I mainly only saw highlights, the odd match when they played in Europe, and obviously Stanisic has been part of Croatia's Euro team so far. I'm not saying that I've watched him a million times and think he looks really good, but I just expect after the season that he's had, he will get an upgrade to be the kind of player that could actually play for Bayern Munich when he goes back there, because in-game currently, I think he'd struggle even to have a massive impact at Bayer Leverkusen. Now, this next player is the one that I have seen the least. I'm not going to claim I've watched him loads of times or anything, but I was doing research for this video to see he was underrated. I was looking through actually the team of the season cards that they did on EAFC, and I noticed he got a really good card after this year's performance for Lille. So I then went and had a look at his stats for this year and had a look at some of his performances, and it looks like, at least in the clips I've seen, he is a very talented young defender. Obviously, Lille did fairly well this season. I think they finished in 4th in the end, and Santos was a pretty big part of their team, played a lot of minutes and is a very talented right back option when it comes to going forward, can play wing back too, and potentially even further forward if you wanted to. But in game, in terms of his current ability and his potential, spoiler alert, I'm going to ruin it now, he has pretty poor current ability to the point where I don't think Lille would even really use him in game. And then potential wise, yes, he might be good if he does reach that potential, but he needs game time to get there. There's a good chance he never will. And even if he did reach that full potential, you're probably looking at a pretty middle of the park right back. A 10th place team in the Premier League might suit him. I don't think he'd ever be good enough to play for a top 6, but that's just how he is. I think he would deserve that upgrade based on the season he's just had, and again, I'm not saying I've seen him a million times, but from what I can tell, this is someone that I think should be improved in next year's game. And just to let you know, that guy only made it into this list because I chose not to put in Malo Gusto, because even though I think he could be better than he is in game, I still think he's a pretty good player in Football Manager with a lot of potential too. So I'll forgive Sports Interactive there, but I would like to see a bit of an improvement for Malo Gusto. But the next player that makes this list, and the one that I think I'd vouch for the most, is Jarrad Branthwaite of Everton. The guy's being linked with massive moves away, nearly got in the England squad for the Euros, arguably should have done, and whilst he is a decent potential centre-back in game, he will never really become anything special in the majority of your saves. You might get the odd one where he does, but the reason is, yes, he's got decent physical attributes and his mentals are good for a 21-year-old, but technically, the guy's pretty poor, let's be honest. I mean, he's got 11 marking, 12 tackling, 12 technique, only 10 passing. Realistically, he was considered by many to be one of the better progressive centre-backs in the league this season, and he's got the traits to match it as well, but he just doesn't seem to have the ability in game. 12 vision and 12 technique is good, but I think he'll get a massive upgrade next year. I don't think Sports Interactive should have expected the season he had. He came off of a loan at PSV. I don't think many of us would have expected him not just to come back into Everton's team, but to become one of their best players this year and one of the best centre-backs in the Prem, either-footed as well. This is a player with a bright future, a future England international, and needs an upgrade in game to reflect that, because most of the time this guy can hardly even crack Everton's side. And I think Championship player Summerville is also someone that we should see an improvement for. Whether he'll stay at Leeds next season is another question after they failed to get promotion, but I think we'll expect him to make a move this summer, and I think he'll get an upgrade because of that and because of his performances this season, because a 21-year-old in-game is just a very average winger who's good for Leeds, mind you, in a Championship, but if you brought him over to a Premier League team, he probably wouldn't get many minutes at all in Football Manager, whereas in real life, he's being linked with the likes of Liverpool, I think, Chelsea as well. Obviously, Chelsea linked with everyone, but Liverpool supposedly interested in Summerville, at least at some point, so it does show this is a player that has admirers right at the top of world football. But in game, yes, he's got some good pace and acceleration and nice dribbling ability, but he's really not the best outside of all of that. I mean, a lot of his technicals are really poor, even if they're not ones that would be vital to his game. The same mentally too, there's no real strong aspects in there. Now, I'm not going to say that I watched every single Leeds game last season, but I did see quite a lot of them, and Summerville looked like their best player by far, if not one of the few. I think Ruter did pretty well as well, but Summerville, yeah, I think he needs a massive improvement to be a Premier League quality winger, and age 21, he should have the potential to go right to the top. Mats Wieffer was my next pick. He's playing in the Eredivisie for Feyenoord, and I just don't think he's rated highly enough. This guy is another one that is being linked to some of the biggest clubs in the world after the most recent season he's had. He is part of Netherlands international setup as well, but in game, just not rated very highly at all. A very run-of-the-mill midfielder with nothing really going for him technically. Yes, he's got some good mentals, but the guy just isn't going to be the best defensively with 10 tackling, 11 marking, 11 positioning. He's not the best passer in the world. He's not terrible in any of these elements, but he's just not great great at anything, and for that reason, he never ends up being that good of a player. But in real life, he's had a fantastic season, is being linked to many of the world's biggest clubs, so I think Max Wieffer is someone that needs an improvement next year. 2 players to go. One of my picks is going to be Nathan Tella, who, don't get me wrong, wasn't necessarily vital in Leverkusen's league and cup win, but he had a pretty good first season in Germany, contributed to around 10 goals for the club, and was a very good squad player that helped them towards everything that they achieved this season. In game though, this guy is pretty rubbish, let's be honest. I mean, he's not really got much going for him. He's 23 years of age, is never really going to get too much better than what you see here, and this is, you know, a mid-table Bundesliga player, and I think Tella is actually better than that. Do I think he should be world class? Obviously not, but this is a guy that had a really good season in the Championship for Burnley. Not like he had an average one, no, he was one of their best players. He then got picked up by Leverkusen, who probably didn't expect to do as well as they did this year, but he's played quite a lot of minutes for them, has been a big part of their squad, and I don't necessarily think he should be a world-class player, but he should at least be someone in FM that could go to a Premier League team and play pretty comfortably, whereas right now, a very much run-of-the-mill wide player that I don't think you're going to get too much joy from, and I'd like to see that improve next season, even if just by a tiny bit. And my final pick is Anthony Gordon, who I think is a player that is underrated in game despite still being pretty good. Now, I did a Newcastle rebuild, and I just felt Gordon was slightly off where he should have been, because in real life, he's been one of Newcastle's best players. He's now in the England setup, has kind of taken over from Rashford for that direct left-sided option in Southgate's squad. Rightly or wrongly, you guys can argue, but he definitely had a good year in the Premier League, and he's got good attributes in game, don't get me wrong. I just think there's some areas like his finishing and his passing that could do with an improvement to make him a much better player in the in-game engine, because right now, he's a decent player in Newcastle's squad in FM, whereas realistically, he should be one of their key men, and he just isn't that right now in game. So he's someone that I think is underrated, but again, you guys might completely disagree with me, so I want to hear your picks in the comments down below. Don't forget to like the video if you did enjoy, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.